Welcome to the Law Key podcast, where you can listen and review case digests and get practical tips on how to survive law school in the Philippines. Studying law can be very challenging, especially for working students, but with the right tools, the right habits, and the right support group, we can surely survive it. This is Kim, your host, and I hope you enjoy and learn something from this episode. Here we go. Hi, for today's episode, we will be discussing about the case of Maximo Calalang versus A.D. Williams with GR number 470800 decided on December 2, 1940. So this case is actually focusing more on the subjects constitutional law and labor law. So let's start. Maximo Calalang, in his capacity as a private citizen and as a taxpayer of Manila, brought before this court this petition for a writ of prohibition against the respondents A.D. Williams as chairman of the National Traffic Commission, Vicente Fragante as director of Public Works, Sergio Bayan as acting secretary of Public Works and Communication, Eulogio Rodriguez as mayor of the city of Manila, and Juan Dominguez as acting chief of police of Manila. So it was alleged that in the petition that the National Traffic Commission headed by A.D. Williams recommended in its resolution to the Director of Public Works and to the Secretary of Public Works and Commission that animal-drawn vehicles be prohibited from passing from passing on some roads or streets of Manila for a specific time of a day for a period of 1 year. So the said resolution was actually adopted by the Directors of Public Works, and that is in pursuant to the provisions of Commonwealth Act number 548, which authorizes Director of Public Works, with the approval of the Secretary of Public Works and Communication, to promulgate rules and regulation to regulate and control the use of and traffic on national roads. As a consequence of such resolution, all animal-drawn vehicles will not be allowed to pass and pick up passengers in the places mentioned that would detriment not only of their owners but of the riding public as well. So the issues of this case are, first, whether or not the Commonwealth Act number 548 is unconstitutional as it constitutes undue delegation of legislative power. Second is whether or not Commonwealth Act number 548 constitutes a violation of right to personal liberty and freedom of locomotion. And last is whether or not the mentioned rules and regulation is a violation of social justice. So let's go first with the first issue, which is whether or not Commonwealth Act number 548 is unconstitutional as it constitutes undue delegation of legislative power. So this is what the petitioner contended, that hey, Commonwealth Act number 548 is actually unconstitutional because it constitutes an undue delegation of legislative power. However, the Supreme Court said that the said contention is untenable. Section 1 of Commonwealth Act number 548 actually do not confer legislative power upon the Director of Public Works and the Secretary of Public Works, but the authority conferred upon them and under which they promulgated the rules and regulation is not to determine what public policy demands, but merely to carry out the legislative power laid down by the National Assembly in the said Act. So that is to promote safe transit upon and avoid obstructions on roads and streets designated as national roads by acts of the National Assembly or by executive orders of the President of the Philippines. So the said delegated power, according to the Supreme Court, is not the determination of what the law shall be, but merely the ascertainment of the facts and circumstances upon which the application of said law is to be predicted. So The Supreme Court also said that the legislative cannot delegate its power to make the law, but it can make a law to delegate a power to determine some fact or state of things upon which the law makes or intends to make its own action depend. To deny this would be as to stop the wheels of the government, because there are many things upon which wise and useful legislation must depend, which cannot be known to the law-making power and must therefore be a subject of inquiry and determination outside of the hails of resolution. Again, according to the Supreme Court, Commonwealth Act number 548 is not unconstitutional because the law provides that legislative cannot delegate its power to make laws. However, it can make laws to delegate the power to determine specific rules and regulation for the implementation of the law. So the provisions of Commonwealth Act number 548 do not confer legislative power to the Director of Public Works, but it conferred the power to implement the law, specifically to provide safe transit. So again, the delegated power is not to determine the law, but merely to ascertain the facts and circumstances for the application of the law. So that's what the Supreme Court said about the said issue. The second one, let's go to the second issue, whether or not Commonwealth Act number 548 constitutes a violation of right to personal liberty and freedom. So, according to the Supreme Court, said act by virtue of which the rules and regulations contained were promulgated aims to promote safe transit upon and avoid obstructions on national roads in the interest and convenience of the public. So in enacting said law, therefore, the National Assembly was prompted by considerations of public convenience and welfare. Public welfare then lies at the bottom of the enactment of said law, and the state, in order to promote general welfare, may interfere with personal liberty, with property, and with business and occupations. Persons and property may be subject to all kinds of restraints and burdens in order to secure the general comfort, health, and prosperity of the state. So this is what we call police power. So according to the Supreme Court, the state was only exercising its power, which is the police power, by promulgating such rules and regulation in virtue of the said act. The Supreme Court also reiterated that the scope of police power keeps expanding as civilization advances, and as it was mentioned in Dobbins versus Los Angeles, the right to exercise the police power is a continuing one, and a business lawful today may in the future, because of the changed situation, the growth of population or other causes, become a menace to the public health and welfare and be required to yield to the public good. So again, the Supreme Court was only exercising, according to the Supreme Court, the state was only exercising its power, which is the police power in this case. So to reiterate, the Commonwealth Act number 548 and the rules and regulation promulgated pursuant to it is not a violation of the right to personal liberty and freedom to locomotion. The Supreme Court said that the state can exercise police power for the welfare and safety of the public. Said power is vested over to the Congress and delegated to the Executive Department, which is what happened in this case. Commonwealth Act number 548 and its rules aim to promote safe transit and avoid construction of national road. Thus, it is actually a valid exercise of the police power. Furthermore, the Supreme Court also reiterated that we are all subject to constraints in order to secure general comfort, health, and prosperity of the state. So that's what the Supreme Court say on the second issue. Now let's move on to the third issue, which states that whether or not the mentioned rules and regulation is a violation of social justice. So the petitioner actually contended that the rules and regulation complained of infringe upon the constitutional precept regarding the promotion of social justice to ensure the well-being and economic security of all the people. However, the Supreme Court said that social justice is neither communism, nor deportism, nor atomism, nor anarchy, but the humanization of laws and equalization of social and economic forces by the state so that justice in its rational and objective secular conception may at least be approximated. So the Supreme Court said that social justice means the promotion of the welfare of all the people, the adoption by the government of measures calculated to ensure economic stability of all the competent elements of the society. And it doesn't solely focus on a specific group of people. So social justice therefore must be founded on the recognition of the society of interdependence among diverse units of society, and of the protection that should be equally and evenly expanded to all groups as a combined force in our social and economic life. So again, the Supreme Court said that no, it is not a violation of social justice because it was said that social justice must be equally and evenly provided to all groups and not to specific groups only. It means that promotion of the welfare of all the people is not achieved through a mistaken sympathy towards any given group, but it should be upholding the principle of the greatest good to the greatest number. So that's the case of Calalang versus Williams. But again, let's reiterate the important takeaway for this case. First important takeaway would be the law provides that legislative power or the legislative department cannot delegate its power to make laws. However, it can make laws to delegate the power to determine specific rules and regulation for the implementation of the law. And second, the state can exercise police power for the welfare and safety of the public, and the said power is vested over to the Congress and delegated to the executive department. And take note that the Commonwealth Act number 548 and its rules aim to promote safe transit and avoid obstruction on national roads, which constitutes general welfare of the public. This means that it is a valid exercise of police power. And the last thing is that it's also not a violation of social justice because the Supreme Court said that social justice must be equally and evenly provided to all groups, and it must upheld the principle of greatest good to the greatest number. So that's it for Calalang versus Williams. Don't forget to subscribe. That's it for today's episode, guys. By the way, if you want to get a copy of the full text of the case, highlighting the important details I mentioned earlier, you may want to check this podcast description for the link. Thank you for listening and talk to you next time. Bye!